Lake water poured from 5-year-old Leo's mouth. His tiny chest heaved, pulling in a ragged, gasping breath against the damp wood of the dock. My knees burned from the rough planks. My hands shook from the raw adrenaline of the chest compressions. A heavy palm shoved my shoulder hard. I stumbled sideways, my bare skin scraping the wood. Monica loomed over me, her knuckles white around a half-empty cocktail glass. "What is wrong with you?" She screamed, her face flushed dark red. "You were supposed to be watching him." Gravel crunched behind us. Derek stood there, his clothes perfectly dry. He turned to the man in the crisp golf polo beside him, the VIP corporate investor holding the keys to his future. Derek exhaled a long, shaky breath. "Thank God," Derek said, his voice dropping into a practiced, heroic tremor. Thank God I jumped in and got to him in time. I stared at his pristine, dry shirt. The investor nodded. Squeezing Derek's shoulder, the truth slammed into me. They were actively framing me for near-fatal child neglect to save a $2 million business deal. The wail of the ambulance sirens cut through the heavy summer air. I walked away from the dock, my wet clothes clinging to my skin, and climbed into my own car to follow the paramedics. 32 years of being the family doormat crystallized in my rearview mirror. I gripped the steering wheel, forcing my breathing to slow. My mother, Brenda, had extorted $2,000 from me just to help rent this luxury lake house for Derek's so-called vital business retreat. When I arrived, they shoved my bags into a windowless basement room and handed me Leo's floaties. I was expected to be the unpaid, invisible babysitter while Derek schmoozed and Monica drank. They broke my spirit back then, conditioning me to accept the scraps of their affection. Today, I am a board-certified emergency room trauma nurse. I make life and death decisions while surgeons wait for my vitals report. I pulled my phone from the center console. I opened my banking app and canceled the $1,500 weekend catering order they had forced onto my credit card. Next, I texted my landlord to lock down my apartment building access. I prepared for war. The hospital waiting room smelled of industrial bleach and stale coffee. Derek paced the linoleum floor, loudly playing the traumatized father. He dragged his hands down his face, making sure the VIP investor seated on the plastic chairs caught every angle of his performance. Brenda hovered next to the investor, patting the man's arm. It was a miracle Derek reached him. She whispered, "My daughter means well, but she just helps out with bandages at the clinic." I stepped through the sliding double doors. Puddles formed around my sneakers. The chatter died instantly. Derek froze mid-pace. I locked eyes with the investor and stepped directly into his personal space. "Sir, my name is Valerie. I am a board-certified emergency room trauma nurse. I executed a textbook 90-second cardiopulmonary resuscitation protocol on my nephew while his father hid behind a barbecue grill." Derek sputtered, taking a step back. "Val, you are hysterical." I pointed a single, steady finger at Derek's chest. "Ask yourself why the hero's clothes were bone dry when the paramedics arrived. Ask yourself why his wife reeked of vodka while her son was cyanotic and pulseless in the water." The color drained from Derek's face. Brenda opened her mouth to speak, her jaw trembling, but the investor held up a hand. The silence in the room became absolute. The investor stood up. He smoothed the front of his polo shirt, his expression turning to stone. "I do not do business with men who use their children as life rafts." He pulled his phone from his pocket, canceled their morning golf tee time with 2 quick taps right in front of Derek's face, and walked out the sliding doors. I cut all contact that night. 3 days later, A sharp knock echoed through my apartment. A man in a cheap suit handed me a manila envelope. You have been served. Derek and Monica were hitting me with a massive strategic lawsuit against public participation. They sued me for defamation and tortious interference, demanding $2 million in lost damages. They claimed my malicious lies at the hospital caused the VIP investor to pull his funding. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A voicemail from Brenda. She was sobbing. Her voice a weaponized blade of guilt. Derek used my retirement savings to fund his business. She cried, if this investor pulls out, I lose my house. You can always get another nursing job. Valerie, but your brother is facing bankruptcy. You have to take the fall for this. You have to sign a public retraction, or you are putting your own mother on the street. They thought they had me cornered. They thought guilt and the legal system would force me into submission. The mahogany table in the mediation room reflected the harsh overhead lights. Derek lounged in a leather chair, a smug smirk plastered across his face. His lawyer pushed a printed retraction document across the table. Sign it, his lawyer said. And we dropped the nursing board complaint about the cracked rib. I ignored the paper. I slid a silver flash drive across the polished wood. While you were all practicing your lies at the hospital, I remembered seeing a blinking red light on the adjacent property's boathouse. I drove over in my wet scrubs. The elderly neighbor was horrified by what he saw. He legally emailed the exported security video directly to my lawyer's inbox, complete with an unbreakable digital timestamp. The video shows Monica drinking with her back turned to the water for 10 straight minutes. It captures the exact audio of Derek shouting that he cannot swim while I dove into the lake. Derek's smirk vanished. His skin turned a sickly, ashen gray. Monica began to hyperventilate, her hands clawing at the collar of her silk blouse. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. I did not send this video to your investor. Derek? I sent the official police report and this footage directly to his corporate risk compliance officer. Hosting an uninsured, alcohol-fueled corporate event that results in near-fatal child neglect legally voids their corporate liability insurance. You are a walking financial liability. The compliance officer killed the deal. Not my words, in a waiting room. Derek's arrogance became the exact mechanism of his own destruction. By legally suing me for severe financial damages, he handed my attorney the right to demand expedited discovery. We legally subpoenaed his business accounts to verify the $2 million he claimed to have lost. The federal audit unraveled his entire life. Derek had been commingling previous investor funds and committing blatant bank fraud to pay for the luxury lake house and his leased sports cars. He tried to drop the defamation lawsuit the next morning, but the damage was irreversible. The corporate compliance tip-off, combined with the sudden withdrawal of his lawsuit, gave the Securities and Exchange Commission the probable cause they needed. They froze his assets pending a federal investigation for wire fraud, facing imminent prison time. Monica filed for a messy, scorched earth divorce to protect herself. Brenda lost her retirement savings trying to pay Derek's exorbitant bail bonds. The Child Protective Services Division, armed with the undeniable boathouse footage, immediately removed Leo from their home. They granted temporary and likely permanent custody to Monica's grounded, sane older sister. I sit in my apartment now. The morning light spills across my hardwood floors, catching the steam rising from my coffee mug. The silence in these walls is no longer lonely. It is the sound of absolute peace. I spent 32 years trying to resuscitate a family dynamic that was already dead on arrival. I kept breathing my own life force into people who only wanted to drown me. Enablers like my mother will always sacrifice a competent daughter just to protect the fragile, inflated ego of a golden child son. Narcissists like my brother view family members not as human beings, but as utility belts and public relations props. If you are listening to this and you feel that familiar, suffocating weight in your chest when your phone rings with a certain caller ID, you need to hear these 3 rules. Rule number 1, competence is a threat to the insecure. If you are capable, self-sufficient, and strong, a toxic family will never praise you. They will try to tear you down to their level, or worse. They will try to use your strength to carry their burdens. Do not shrink yourself to make them comfortable. Rule number 2, forgiveness without accountability is just self-harm. Society constantly preaches that blood is thicker than water and that family is everything. Biology does not excuse abuse. Setting a firm boundary is not an act of war. It is a fundamental act of self-preservation. You are allowed to walk away from the people who hurt you, even if you share a last name. Rule number 3, always keep the receipts. Whether it is a saved text message, a financial bank statement, or a legally obtained security video. The truth is the only shield you have against a gaslighter. They will try to rewrite history to cast you as the villain. Let them talk, but make sure you are holding the undeniable proof. The day I stopped giving my family my air was the day I finally started breathing for myself. I am Valerie, and I am finally free. If you are currently drowning just to keep someone else afloat, ask yourself this: is it not time you let go of the anchor? Drop a comment below if you have ever had to legally or emotionally sever ties with a toxic relative. Subscribe to this channel. Keep building your boundaries, and never apologize for surviving. Let us pause right there. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there asking, why on earth did a brilliant, capable trauma nurse hand over $2,000 to a family that shoved her into a windowless basement? Why did she put a $1,500 catering bill on her credit card for people who treated her like a servant? And why did it take her 32 years to finally walk away? It is incredibly easy to judge from the outside, but we need to talk about a psychological trap called intermittent reinforcement. I like to call it the slot machine effect. When a toxic family treats you terribly 99% of the time, but occasionally drops 1% of fake warmth, a rare invitation, a brief smile, a moment where they pretend you are part of the inner circle, your brain treats it like a jackpot. Valerie was not foolish. She was deeply conditioned. She was addicted to those tiny crumbs of hope, believing that if she just proved her competence one more time, they would finally see her value. But here is the hard truth. Toxic people do not want your worth. They want your resources. The moment Valerie woke up from that illusion, she delivered an absolute masterclass in financial and legal self-defense. Let us break down the 3 street smart moves that saved her life. First, she executed the financial buyout. The second, Valerie realized she was being framed on that dock. She did not waste time begging for an apology. She opened her phone, canceled the catering order, and locked down her apartment. She instantly cut off their financial supply line. If someone is trying to sink your ship, you stop paying for their groceries. Second, she prioritized building the case. Narcissists will never confess to their crimes, so arguing with them is useless. Valerie knew this. Instead of fighting with Derek and Monica, she drove straight to the neighbor and legally secured the security camera footage. She built an undeniable wall of evidence before she ever sat down at the mediation table. Finally, she weaponized the audit strategy. Scammers and manipulators absolutely hate details. When Derek tried to bully her into silence with a $2 million defamation lawsuit, Valerie did not panic. She used the legal discovery process to force him to show his actual business accounts. When you force a grifter to show their math, their entire house of cards collapses. Derek's attempt to bankrupt her is exactly what exposed his wire fraud to the federal government. Here is the final verdict. Your competence, your money, and your peace of mind are not community property for your family to exploit. Valerie learned the hard way that sometimes the only way to heal is to let the people who hurt you face the absolute weight of their own consequences. You are not obligated to be the collateral damage in someone else's ego trip. Have you ever had to pull the plug on a toxic relationship or demand the receipts from a manipulator? I want to hear how you protected yourself. Drop your story in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more street smart survival guides. And remember, your freedom is always worth the price of admission.